Hello humans, it's Rob with Not a Robot Podcast here with a return to the Pride comic review. This time we are looking at Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future. Apparently some of you heard our previous episodes and loved it, so we're back! Thank you so much for the love. In response, we are working on some more content to bring straight to your ears, so stay tuned for more. If you've got something to say, send us an email to notarobotcomics@gmail.com, and you can get us on Twitter too, @notarobotcomics. And if you want your mail read on the show, just let us know. We've got a great group of humans, many of whom identify as members of the LGBTQ plus community, and we're from all over the Not a Robot podcast network. So my name is Rob, he, him, and I identify as bisexual. You can find me on Twitter @Rob_2814. With me today we have Holly.
Hello, I am Holly. I identify as she, and I am bisexual. You can find me on Twitter @NotAMombot.
Perfect. And we have Jessica.
Hi, she, her. I also identify as bisexual. Twitter, I recently changed my handle. I think I'm just @Jessica Hopko.
And perfect. And we have Caitlin as well.
Hiya, she, they, finger guns. You can find me on Twitter @MXThunderFunk. I'm so happy to be here.
I love that Twitter handle. I don't know if I ever told you. It makes me giggle every time I see it. So yeah, the Bipod is writing again, which is like the pseudo name we've given ourselves. I love it. So before we get started, what's new, folks? Anything newsworthy in the air?
LGBTQ related. The new season of Atypical came out, and one of the characters officially came out as bi in the show, which was so cool. And I'm hopeful for little Jessicas everywhere.
I've been meaning to check that show out. I haven't had the time. It's on
for the Americans
Netflix?
out there, there's a map circulating that I first saw on Reddit, but has turned up other places, that shows the gayest counties in the U.S. relative to the average population. And I am thrilled to announce that the highest concentration of bisexuals is in Suffolk County, Massachusetts, right around Boston.
That's an interesting map. I like that. I wonder if there's one for Canada. I gotta check that out.
It would just be Toronto and Vancouver.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, ours looks very East Coast and West Coast have a lot of green, and then you get kind of to the south and not so much.
And there's just Chicago, this one shiny center.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's some fun stuff to go on. Yeah, I don't really have anything newsworthy myself right now, but it's just great to be back, and I hope to be bringing this to everybody for a while. And I hope you guys feel the same way.
It's so much fun.
It is. I love it. Okay, so now it's time for the book. I guess we can get into that. Today we have, like I said before, Fanny Galactic, Tuck to the Future, from writer Chris Fields, with art and letters by Edward Bentley. And this is about a drag queen called Fanny Galactic who has a long-running karaoke show, and during her 25th anniversary show, some old friends, in quotations, stop by and cause a malfunction that sends Fanny 100 years into the future. This future is run by Sybil Disorder, a rival of Fanny's, and the one responsible for bringing her to the future in the first place. Fanny meets a group of freedom fighters, and through a big adventure, Fanny makes it to Sybil's throne room to end the madness for good. After a few surprises during the final event, Fanny is sent back through time, but this time a little further back than planned. I won't give away the whole book because it is a very fun read that I think should be experienced, and I implore you all to pick this up and give it a read or two. So, getting into the book, I'll start with the art style, because I thought it was a very unique art style, and there was a bit of discussion when we first saw the book that it reminded some of us of Archer, and I was thinking of another Cartoon Network show. I can't remember which one now, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very unique and very different, but fit the tone of the book very well. What did you guys feel about it?
Yeah, I completely agree. The real thick lines, definitely like Archer, maybe even like a little bit of Johnny Bravo, perhaps. I loved every single one of the chapter splashes kind of that throwback like 70s rainbow vibe. Just
Yeah.
that's right up my alley.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
I also
Yeah, I
thought
didn't
of
know
like
Johnny Bravo.
Borderlands. Like I know that's a video game, but the art style,
Oh, that's a
specifically
good one, yeah.
with like the robots, made me think of it.
Yeah, the thick lines, I'd honestly bring that to mind as well. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I liked it a lot, and I felt like, for me, I'm someone who sometimes struggles visually with reading comics, like as a PDF or in a web viewer. It's just harder, like my brain doesn't want to read them that way. So this art style was a lot easier to take in than some others. And it was just, it was easier for me to read, which was,
I agree.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the green text boxes. It was hard to read that font. That was my only complaint with the choices they made in terms of the book as itself.
Yeah, you had to really zoom in on those.
Yeah.
Like, I forget the character's name, but the doctor, every time he spoke, it's like a little green text box, but the font that they use is different. And just, I don't know if it's just too stretched out widthwise and not tall enough to distinguish some of the letters. It was just a little bit trickier. Not that it was difficult by any means, but if I could pick apart one thing, I'd be like, just maybe make this font a little bit easier to read.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
very robotic font. Very, very flat, though. I can see that.
I
But
wondered
if it
if they
was-
chose that because he's a robot.
Yeah, I just
He's
think
like a
of
floating television.
Yeah.
I just think of like the digital clock font, you know what I mean? Where it's those really squared out, like a B looks like an 8 almost. Whereas these are just so flat height-wise, it felt that there probably would be multiple robot fonts they could have picked. I just felt like this one might not have been the best choice. Maybe it was just because of the green background, honestly. Maybe if it was still in a black and white.
I'm sorry. It just
Maybe.
occurred to me that of course we all had trouble with this. We are not a robot.
That's it, exactly.
Irony!
There you have it, folks. Don't be a robot. Oh, wow. Okay, so what did we all think of the story?
I thought it was super fun. I'm a sci-fi nerd, so time travel stories are always interesting to me. So this was fun. Some of it was, I think this is not the first book in the series, correct? Is the second?
That's honestly something I was trying to look up, and I couldn't find it, because every time I typed in Fanny Galactic, it just gave me Tuck to the Future. I couldn't find
Okay.
a first one,
So
but it
maybe
did
this is
feel
the
that
first
way.
one. But there were some spaces where I felt like I was missing a little context, and maybe that will get filled out later. Maybe it won't. Things like, we get to the future and Sybil Disorder runs the future. Did she time travel there? Or has she just been alive this whole time and not really
I couldn't
aged?
figure that out either.
Yeah. Well, that was a little confusing. There was a one page near the end that I could be misremembering. I'm trying to look for it now, where she ended up younger. She just aged older, and then somehow ended up, through some scientific mumbo jumbo, she ended up de-aging. That, or she just dyed her hair. I don't know.
I think they talk about how the doctor kept her alive using experiments or something, that like he's been her doctor the whole time.
Okay.
I think she is old. I'm just not entirely clear if she like started in this future, time traveled back to mess with Fanny, and is now old because it's been 100 years or something like that. That part I'm not clear.
Yeah, they definitely make her seem to be almost ageless. Even though she does age, it's like I think maybe that could be the perceptive of the reader, because they leave it so open-ended.
Yeah.
And I do agree with what Caitlin said. Most of it was enjoyable. It's more of a like fun romp. I wouldn't say that this is anything super deep. Like, it didn't feel like there was a overarching message of equality or anything to do with that kind of thing, which, again, it doesn't need. Things are allowed to just be fun, and I definitely enjoyed it, but there were those moments of, is it going to explain this more in a follow-up, or is there a prequel that I missed? Even in the beginning with Fanny getting ready for her drag show, like with her partner, that relationship, it felt like we should already know stuff about their relationship.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a Kickstarter. I don't see any other stories by them off the top of my head, like off this particular one. Not digging a whole lot here, but it does look like this is like kind of a standalone thing, and I completely agree with your term that it's a fun romp, because it reminded me so much of like my time spent at a bar in Chattanooga called Alan Gold's, and it was, I mean, if you've never been to a drag show, like that alone is like a few hours of romping fun, and this was that inside a comic book, and it was so great.
So I'm just doing another search, and I found another book by the same writer, Chris Fields. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Called Crime and Disorder is spelled the same way as Sybil Disorder. So
maybe there's more Sybil out there.
Maybe. I don't know. I definitely want to do a bit more digging with this.
I also love her.
Sybil was probably my favorite character.
Yeah. Her drag name is spot on.
It is.
I think that's my favorite part about drag queens, is the different puns that they can come up with, that it sometimes it feels so obvious that you're left sitting here like, but I didn't think of it, so.
Yeah, they're great. There's in the first chapter, there's a panel of Sybil like doing a power pose finger gun after an explode, like, and it's that very cool guys don't look back at explosions; they just walk away.
There was with the story. I know we mentioned the beginning. It felt like there was more to it there. When I did my first read through, I went back when I was writing some notes for this, and I went back to the beginning, and knowing how it ended and where the characters sat, the beginning made a bit more sense. There's still some stuff that really feels like there was a prequel to this, but at least the first chapter makes it a lot more sense and flows a bit better. So some of this might do better with the second read through, but it honestly feels like a much more coherent story once you know everything that's happened, and that's time travel in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think there were moments when I had to, like, you know, I was confused and I had to back up a few panels and try again. But I don't know, you know, we're referencing, was there an earlier book that might have set some of this foundation? But I think the thing is to jump to, is there an earlier book where there would be, you know, another story or another adventure? Because if they had spent a chapter just establishing who everyone is, I think that would have been less fun.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know,
it didn't need, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't need to do more than it did. It just felt like we were stepping into the action, which is good. But since that first chapter is kind of almost reestablishing their relationships, like the relationship that Fanny has to the other drag queens who come to her show and are making fun of her being on the front page of the newspaper, it felt like there was some intent behind their shadiness rather than just drag queens being shady, which we find out later, like, what the actual story was that got her on the newspaper and all that kind of stuff. So it did explain a little bit more that, like, okay, I can see how someone being touted as a hero for what Fanny did could be comical or ironic based on whatever else is happening in the world.
Yeah, the story of how she got into the newspaper the first time, because the second time was just, she's been doing this for 25 years. the story of the first time never really got fleshed out either. Like we know what started, but we don't really know how it resolved.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's ever going to come back. I have a feeling it's not. It's just never going to be referenced again.
Well, didn't they, like when she's explaining herself to the people in the future, I think it's like page, like 33. She like finds a baby. I thought that was what.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. She finds a baby, and then they show a picture of her, like, holding the baby, standing next to a policeman. But we don't, like, it's not clear what happened to that baby.
That's true.
Are they okay? They're not in the dumpster anymore. That's a great first step.
Yes. Agreed.
The police officer took it to the fire station, I guess.
Oh man. So yeah, I think the odds are either it's never going to come up again, or, you know, depending on how much longevity this series gets, way down the line, that baby is going to come back in a big way.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Like, one day, sometime in time, Fanny's going to be stuck in a situation this man or woman or... Yeah, they never really said whatever. Baby. Yeah. Well,
listen,
grown up.
Babies don't know their gender yet.
Exactly. Exactly.
Dumpster babies just need love. And to be rescued from the dumpsters.
But this grown person could just walk in and be like, remember when you saved me from that dumpster that one time? I'm going to save you from this dumpster. And that's it.
And now we're even.
Yeah. Never contact me again.
Just scoop you out of the Star Wars compactor.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so what did we think of Fanny as a character? I thought Fanny was brilliant.
I love her. I love, especially, like, so much of queer culture is youth obsessed. I am digging that our hero is 60 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But you could not tell. I keep having to remind myself that she's 60. Yeah. She looks 30.
Yeah.
My one wish
might just be the art style, but
it's contour.
It's fantastic.
My one wish was that she just had more of a motive. Like, it felt like most of it happened to her. She didn't have a lot of agency, and like, she gets out of a scrape, obviously. She's like the protagonist and working through what she has to do to survive, basically, and try to get back to her own time. It just felt like she wasn't able to really showcase who she is. Like, it felt like it was more so the characters around her. But that happens in lots of stories, that, like, we look at any protagonist, they're kind of supposed to be like a stand-in for the reader or the viewer, and then all the side characters have tropes or characteristics that are more unique. But yeah, I did enjoy that. Mm-hmm. It was kind of that whole, am I still doing this? Why am I still doing this? Should I keep doing this? I've been at this for however many years. I just wish that, I don't know, maybe I missed it. It just felt like she as a character didn't have a ton of characterization once the end of the first chapter happened.
I agree, but it reminded me, it didn't bother me as much. I think maybe because I'm used to that in time travel fiction. Like you said, she's kind of the stand-in for us, right? For the reader who doesn't know what's going on. And so to me, her getting through this book where she is trying to figure out what she's doing, but mostly she's just reacting to what's going on around her, felt similar to, say, the first few episodes of Farscape or or even Futurama, you know. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say she's quite Philip J. Fry, but she's a little more clever than that. But, you know, she's got to sort of get the lay of the land before she can really make stronger decisions. And I think in the next book, where she's in a different time, there'll be a lot more room for that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think that would also play into her getting her footing, as we see, like you say, in lots of those kinds of science fiction stories, is that usually the first like kind of whirlwind, and then after that, there's more room to have agency.
Very true. And her the lack of her involvement in what's happening to her could even be a comment on the character, especially if she's questioning, what am I even doing here? I hope this one gets a second one.
Yeah.
I think she deserves it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Is it still in Kickstarter? Do we need to direct people to kickstart this comic book?
I think you can purchase it through the Kickstarter, but it's definitely not still live. Like, it's not trying to reach a goal. I think it completed and shipped out to those who kickstarted, but I think you can still buy the book if you wanted to.
I'm pretty sure I saw this on Amazon as well, so I think that
Nice.
that goal has been out, and this book's been out for a bit now. But it's still a great read, and definitely just pick it up. If you love indie comics, this is definitely one that goes on the shelf.
Oh, it looks like Crime and Disorder
Agreed.
is the follow-up to this one.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
perfect.
Oh.
So that's coming.
Well, then there we go.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
Yes.
So I have to ask, did you all, still talking about Fanny, when you read comic books, do you imagine what the characters' voices sound like?
Yeah, that's
to
a
me,
big discussion in comics about internal voices.
Like, my first impression of Fanny was that she looks kind of like Pam Poovey, again, because we were in the Archer Zone. But as I kept reading it, she sounded like Harvey Fierstein to me.
Oh yeah, that's just a fantastic voice. I love Harvey Fierstein's voice.
I had like a weird, like, divine kind of gravel, but with like I'm trying to remember who it was that like you said, it just pops into your head, so I'm trying to like dissect the different parts of it. Like, Smoke's a lot because also British, like the authors and the publishers seem British, and the setting was British in the opening chapter, so I definitely got like a little bit of like, oh, I'm a terrible impressionist, but like, want to be a star? I can make you a star, but with like 10 packs of smokes, like that kind of voice.
Oh yeah, they are British, which is why, warning for any of our this side of the Atlantic friends who pick this book up, do not be alarmed. That is not the F slur in the first few pages. They are just talking about cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. That's how I love to refer to cigarettes, and I know I can't. But, they call people who are obsessed with British stuff like
Anglophiles.
Oh, Anglophiles. There we go. There we go. Yes. That is me.
I got super called out. This is tangentially related. In the first season of UK Drag Race, the first episode, they did looks for Queen Elizabeth. And I was watching it with a bunch of my friends. We were having a watch party. And one queen would come around the corner and I'd be like, oh, the Order of the Garter. And then it would pop up on the bottom of the screen, Order of the Garter, and then show a queen picture for reference. And all my friends like looked at me. I'm like, sorry. They're like, no, if you can do it, like, go ahead. So for the rest of that runway, I kept doing it. And then one of them came around the corner and was like, where's your purse? And then Michelle read them for not having a purse. I was like, haha. Me being into the royal family pays off in drag queens.
Awesome.
Yes.
So there's definitely some moments of humor that if you missed that it was British, you might be a little confused, but it definitely doesn't overpower this book at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to get into the idea. My family is Scottish, so I grew up living in Canada, but I grew up with Britain on the mind and basically living British practically, and I still had to remind myself that this was inherently in London, and it's just not very apparent most of the time.
Well, I mean, to be fair, she does travel through time.
Yeah, exactly.
Things look a little different 100 years in the future.
Yeah, but even my internal voice, I depending on the character, I still try to give my internal voices the right accent. And I kept having to remind myself, no, they're British. Give them an English accent, not American.
Yeah. I think that's the good thing about stories, though. You can transcend dialects and accents and all that, and just enjoy the ride.
That's it. So, speaking now of the side characters, and I didn't know who to differentiate between the side character and a main character, so I'll figure everybody besides Fanny is a side character. What did we think of them? And we can start with Sally, who honestly is probably one of my favorite side characters.
I feel so bad for Sally.
Yeah. That reveal was a little shocking near the end.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like early on, she was, just part of the gang. Mm-hmm. One of these friends who was going along, doing her thing, going to the show every week, bitching the whole time. As we all do when you truly love someone who organizes the same karaoke show every week for 25 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It felt like, like we already talked about Sybil and our unclarity of whether she was from the future, traveled back in time, or just aged a long time. It felt like the treatment of Sally made me lean more towards Sybil was from the future, came back in time to find tools to manipulate, almost, rather than being a true friend who then turns on her friends. Mm-hmm. But again, it's all kind of up for interpretation, and it is, like we said, a fun romp. So reading too much into it, it might have just been for shock value, plus it helped Fanny be able to get out of that if there had been a different, quote-unquote, horror movie monster kind of thing that she had to deal with. The writer would have had to come up with a way for Fanny to know how to combat that at 60 years old. So there are limits to what could be done. But I think it worked out in Fanny's favor for the detriment of Sally.
I'm struggling a little bit with these characters with I don't want to spoil the entire book, so I'm trying. I don't know, I'm a little on the fence about what to be forthcoming about and what not to when it comes to plot elements. But suffice it to say, Sally got kind of a raw deal in the 100%. Future.
Yeah, her demeanor throughout the story is honestly probably what makes her my favorite character. That even in the future, this horrific thing has happened to her, but she still acts like Fanny's friend, and no bad blood between them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I think in the end just helps save the day.
Yeah. And I think that's reflective of the community in a lot of ways, especially with older queer people, where, maybe there's someone in your circle who you're not always the biggest fan of, but this is your family, and you're found family, and you stick by each other because the world often is not going to be there for you. And hopefully that continues to get less and less true as things go on. Not people being loyal to each other, but the necessity to sort of band together in self-defense. But I think, that's especially true for queer people who, lived through, let's say, the 80s and the 90s and survived. And you have who's left, and you have to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
good
well
way.
said.
You do you can't change the past, and you do have to make it work. That is very well said.
Or can you if you have a time machine? We're gonna find out.
It also reminded me of the only I'm allowed to be mean to my friends. You need to back off.
Oh yeah.
I earned the right to be mean to them. I'm allowed to make fun of their outfits and their drag shows. yeah, she deserves her own book, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
Sybil kind of got a chance to shine and do this thing in this book. And so I'm going to start a petition for Sally to get one, too.
Maybe book
Yes.
3.
I also need to know more about her Titanic tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the most, and I'm trying so hard not to give away the ending, but that, yeah, it could get explained.
Mm-hmm. Tune in.
So we'll move on to, and I'm just looking. My memory is horrible.
I think
I
my
had it in my
favorite
head.
part about this book was like the Kevin Terrence arc.
Yes.
Like,
Okay.
that reveal, except my other problem though was the pages with them were so far apart that I almost forgot what the last page had shown. Like it was kind of the B plot, and so going back and forth, I had to like scroll up and down with the big reveal to be like, okay, who wrote that? Who's it from? Like I had to piece together in my brain, okay, and that is okay, and these are okay, I've got it. Just because it confused me because of how spaced out it was, but there were so many questions left. I was like, what? Who? Please explain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so can you all settle for me? The half robot, the cyborg man.
Yeah.
This is the same person who, when they went out with the t-shirts, he got injured when they exploded the bar,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and now he's a cyborg man.
Yeah.
And so the
That's
two
it.
of them are still in love.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that, but I wasn't. I kept mixing up who was Kevin and who was Terrence and who was Rome. I
Russell.
kept getting their names confused.
Yeah. So
and it threw me
it's
off.
Kevin and Terrence are the couple. Kevin got injured, and then Russell is the friend who, with Terrence, met Fanny in the future.
Okay. See, I was mixed up again. I confused Kevin and Russell.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that came down to, like, specifically the page 40. I was like, okay, so you were Terrence, and you were injured. You were together, your shirt said it, okay. But yeah, I was right there with you. I was like, who? Because the difference between Terrence and Russell is their hair color by, like, a smidgen.
Yeah.
One of them has slightly more orange hair.
It's
and
okay
very
to look
hard
different,
to discern
Twinks.
otherwise.
You don't all have to wear the same outfit.
Oof. In their defense, it was a stag do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and so gosh, he got injured because he blew up, like, it was basically like a hate crime, right? Like, he blew up, like, these robots and stuff, and then you know, he became one. So
Yeah, I wasn't
and then his part.
clear. Like, I think, was that a resistance thing? Because at that point, Sybil had already taken over, and that was the bar where the robo drag guards hung out.
Yeah,
So
it
they were
felt
blowing up the
Was it?
robots that
Okay.
hunt down the drag queens.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it felt like
I missed that.
one of them planned a stag, and then the other one was like, but what if we make it political? And it
See, I
was
don't
like,
think the stag was real. They said something about the shirts being like, I think that was a ruse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
You can tell that they're freedom fighters, but yeah, there was just certain things that were probably purposefully left a little vague, but then it made it more confusing later on. And then it just ended abruptly to then finish the final fight with the A plot and then more time travel. And I was like, no, come back! I like closure. I'm one of those people where, like, anytime a story is like, what happened? We're going to leave it up to you. I'm like, no, tell me. What? Just 5 minutes
return.
more. Yeah. 5 minutes more. I don't need the whole thing. You don't need to tell me that they lived off for 40 years and then one of them died of cancer. I don't need that part. But when it's like, we're going to leave you right before they kiss again. It's like, no! What?
And that's honestly, I think one of the sadder things about Kevin is he gets caught in this explosion and gets turned into a robot or android, cyborg, I never remember which one's which, and is just, whether it's against his will, seems a little evil now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's heartbreaking, but it's also why you should be a robot. But it's just sad.
He still has white text though, so
yeah,
I don't think he's full robot like the Doctor. But.
Well, in the notes at the back of the book, it did mention that it, at least for his head, it's a mask or a helmet, which the design kind of didn't make it look that way because it looked like his neck was all wires.
Yeah.
But apparently he's still, under that mask, is still inherently human.
That's some Darth Vader stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's most of the side characters that I can remember, that I can think of.
Poor Fanny's partner. He's just like there to be like, hello, newspaper. All right, see you later.
I thought Dennis the robot was really cool.
Yeah, I was just looking at Dennis the robot.
That must have been fun to come up with and create. He was the friendly robot barman.
Yeah. Okay, so with the story as a whole, how, and I know it's a little out there being time travel and all, how would this translate into our world? How realistic would this be, time travel aside?
Well, I think not just the time travel, but the whole premise of the toxic drag queen uprising seemed a little far-fetched to me. It's a little fanciful. And something that I have heard certain conservative pundits express terror over the possibility of, which always cracks me up. The gays are trying to take over. Who will think of the children?
The gays often think of the children.
Yeah.
So you guys don't.
The drag queens are saving babies from dumpsters. I don't know what you all have been doing for the children.
Exactly, right?
I think like the only corollary I could find was that with the rise of RuPaul's Drag Race and the popularity of it, it's great for the LGBTQ community as a whole to have more visibility. But I was reading an article about how we need more shows like it that have that sort of visceral connection to the greater population outside of the LGBTQ community rather than just drag queens, that it's almost like drag queens as a community need to uphold the whole community because they're the only ones with the visibility currently, which is sad. And we do have TV shows coming out, but I wouldn't say any of them are as popular as Drag Race has become, which again, not a bad thing, but at its current state, it's all the hopes and dreams of all of the letters of the spectrum being held up by drag queens alone. So if the drag community, again, it's getting better, especially it seems with the past couple of seasons with more trans participants in the show, but it definitely feels like it could become almost like gatekeeper, or just that the general public won't get that kind of queer history about the other letters. You know what I mean? Like, especially like season 9 had a lot of this where they talked a lot about all the history of queer culture and drag culture and all that kind of stuff, which was amazing and so good, so well done, teaching the children. But it'd be so nice to have something like that for the lesbian community or something like that. I watched a documentary about this couple from Canada. There were 2 girls who went to the States to play softball or slow pitch. I don't know if those are different.
I want to see that.
So it was really good, but they basically in the States, because of where they were living, they were able to basically kind of be a couple with this very small closeted group. But then when they came home to Canada, they had to just, oh, this is my roommate. And then, like, for a few years, just because the general public, it wasn't necessarily illegal at that point. I don't remember what year they came back to Canada. But there was a lot of, oh, yes, my roommate, your Aunt Sally, my roommate. Yes, yep, we're going to come. But then kind of the family had to, like, it's okay. You can tell us. And so, like, now they're, by the end of the documentary, they were, like, in a home, and, like, everyone in the home was super respectful, like, the staff and the other, like, residents and all this kind of stuff. So they were, like, finally able to kind of relax and be themselves like they had been in the past when they lived in the States in that very small community that was more open-minded and had more gay members. So it's that kind of story where I'm like, I wish there was more of a bigger outreach to show people these kinds of stories, and same thing for all the different identities.
So what I'm hearing is people of the world, make the bipod as popular as RuPaul's Drag Race. Because
we will bring you these
for
stories.
The children. I get an amen.
For the children.
We have a real mom and everything.
Right? Yeah, so it was just, that was the only thing I could think of that kind of harkened back to real world, quote unquote, was that it was drag queens, drag bots, focusing on that drag aspect in the future, which again, nothing wrong with. I would just be curious if there was different bots for different letters. Like, okay, we got the drag bots, they're going out, and we got the bi bots, they're going to go round up some bis.
Perhaps. That does seem like, I mean, I know that there's a lot of hairspray involved, but that seems like a lot of stuff to hold up, you know? And historically, drag queens and that whole scene sort of has held up everybody else in the alphabet and the rainbow, and even the people who probably don't deserve it after a while, because and I think that has to do a lot with the theater aspect of it, because when you are able to express yourself artistically and then communicate your thoughts and feelings and things like that, it helps you process things a whole lot differently. So you become more equipped and prepared to speak with people and to hold up the rest of the community. However, it is time for other people to start sharing those stories and in the creative ways that we've seen, and take those examples and go ahead and join the story. So
Agreed. And that's the other thing. I can't critique it any farther than I can throw it, because it is probably one of the first drag queen comic books, like, with so little content. Trying to ask more of it is not undeserved, but it is good in its own right for all the things that it is representing. I'm just ready for more. Yes. Do all of it.
Yes. That's right. Being impatient and ready for more can make it, yes. But this reminded me so much of my early 20s, working all week, and then starting to pregame at like 5, so I could be at the drag show by 9 to get the good table, and out on the dance floor until at least 3. So this whole book was like, yes, like come to the drag show, everyone, and then throw some superheroes into it. But anyone else, any other writers, any other people that want to do comic books or anything, like, we need more stories just like this from different perspectives.
100%.
Definitely. Yeah, the more real world experience you've got, just put it to the paper. Give it to us.
No pressure, though.
No.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Now, back to our program.
And just kind of a another note about the story as it relates to our world. There's I mean, it's indicated in here that one of the things that drove a wedge between Sybil and Fanny is the way that they each, you know, experienced the AIDS crisis and how they got through it. And I mean, AIDS is part of our history. It's always going to be, and it's a real dark part of queer history and reality now. And gosh, what a relief to read a queer story that acknowledges, you know, that that's happened without bumming me out in a huge way, because I'm still just having so much fun traveling through time and fighting robots. And
yeah, it was respectful of history without kind of lingering on.
Without dragging it down. Yeah. You got to keep living.
Very,
That's right.
very true.
The thing I was just thinking about that it's not inherently part of the book, but just really made me think realistically. So they were talking about the 80s when the three of them were originally together, and then Fanny, as her solo show, has been going for 25 years, and that 25 years ago was, at least when this book was out, was 1995. And that they make it seem like it's been such a long time, but for me, that wasn't that long ago still.
Yeah, I remember
I feel so
1995.
old.
I was 2.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Well, same with
aging.
all those kinds of things where, like, thinking about how, like, the 80s is 40 years ago.
Shh,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
It's hard to, like, take a step back and look at the whole timeline instead of our perception of time and think about how short things have been in the grand scheme of time, basically. Like, same thing with, like, even Stonewall. It feels like a different generation, but some of them are still alive. Like, there's not that big a gap, really. But then in other ways there are big gaps.
Yeah, it's all so recent. I was looking things up recently, and did you know, just as a point of comparison, all 4 Twilight books and movies were released before we had legalized gay marriage across the U.S.
Well
Uptown
done.
Funk predates the song Uptown Funk, which you still get stuck in your head on a regular basis, predates legal gay marriage across the country.
Yeah, that's a you guys thing.
Yeah, that is a problem. I can't quite relate to that one.
But I definitely understand it. Like, we moved into our new house, and down the street from us, because I grew up in a military town, so there were constantly new neighbors. And down the street moved in a couple, Nikki and Judy. And I don't know why, but my dad missed the fact that it was Nikki and Judy. Because Nikki dressed pretty masculine, had crew cut, was in the military, all these different things. My parents got along with them swimmingly. And then they were packing up to move away. And my dad was like, oh yeah, Nick and Judy are so much fun. And my mom was like, Nikki. And he was like, what? Like, he just didn't realize that she was a woman and that they were gay. Yeah, like 2 years. And I'm like, Dad.
Wow.
And he's like, we got along fine. And I guess it probably was just that, like, he, to Nikki, never had to use pronouns. Like, you don't really talk to someone and say their pronouns. It's more so referencing them to other people. And my dad's not a gossip or anything, so it was never that he was talking about them to anyone else either. So it just never came up. But I was like, how? How did we go 2 years and you didn't realize? He's like, we went to their house for drinks. Like, I didn't clue in. I'm like, okay, sure. But I think just because it wasn't a taboo up here, if it had been, then it might have gone differently. But because it wasn't a taboo, it wasn't even really a question or a concern. And they didn't need to hide, and it wasn't anybody else on the street's concern.
Yeah, I think it was 94, 95 maybe. There was, it was still, so this was 5 years after, the 80s, where we're just coming out of the AIDS crisis and stuff. And there were people like lining up at like the Senate floor talking about how this could be basically saying the most, like, I remember this little old lady, and Tosh pointed out, and anyway, uh, anyway, she was already, like, she was there just saying, like, yeah, you can get this stuff from doorknobs. You can, if someone has sex with another, person of the same sex or whatever, or anybody that has to do with this life, like, she was, like, going on about, like, saying these vile things on the Senate floor. And people believe that stuff, like, that people, just because of their lifestyle or whatever, like, are inhuman when they're not.
Mm-hmm. It's very easy to other, and then as soon as it's us versus them, you will believe anything you want that fits your narrative.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice that it's slow, but breaking down the competition almost between us and them, making things seem more connected or more relevant to the general population. Like, even my girlfriends who, like, don't know any gay people personally, just living in smaller towns, anyone who was gay would move to the city where they had communities. All of my friends, like, oh, I watch RuPaul and all this stuff, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, that's great that you now connect with them. And they talk about the pit crew, and I'm like, okay. So it seemed, for parts of it, like RuPaul's Drag Race, because it's men dressing as women who are then hitting on men, because the visual of female presentation expressing what views like a heterosexual interest, that it might be, like, we already talked about the theater and art of it, it might be that easier pill to swallow of, this looks like the definition I have of sex. Mm-hmm. Between the genders, which isn't ideal, and I'm not saying that it's wrong or bad or anything like that, but it is, I'm curious if it helps bridge the gap between the us and them, that I know it's a man dressed as a woman hitting on a man, and maybe that's why part of it is as popular as it is, perhaps. I might be reading too much into that also.
Do you guys get Queer Eye in Canada?
Show. Yep.
Cool.
Not the original one. I think it aired on a network that you basically had to be in, like, the Toronto area to get. Because, like, out here in the West, we got, like, the Seattle stations.
Okay.
I didn't really get...
I think the original was on cable here. So, like, it was one of the channels that, like, not everybody gets. It depends on what you paid for TV.
Yeah. Whereas the new one is Netflix, obviously, and we do get it. Drag Race was weird, though. The first season of Drag Race that we got was season 8. The first drag show I saw was Bob the Drag Queen. So he came all the way out to this little tiny town in Saskatchewan. And my friends were like, we're going. So we went, and he was like, y'all Canadians, I don't know, I didn't know what it was that you guys love me more than any other drag queen. And then someone told me that your first season of Netflix was my season. So I'm your BB. You're welcome. And it's true that kind of everyone's first exposure to Drag Race was Bob. Like, that was our quote-unquote first drag queen superstar. And so it was this really interesting dynamic, because then for me, as soon as I watched season 8, I was like, I need more. But the only one that my husband could find for me online, perhaps illegally, was season 5. So I watched 8 then 5, and then, like, I just bounced all over the place until all of it was released on Canadian Netflix. So yeah, it's interesting how different my experience with it is sometimes compared to other people's.
Now I'm thinking about who would play Fanny in the movie version of this comic book. Could Bob the Drag Queen do it?
I'm sure he
it's a
could.
Different style.
Yes, I think the humor would almost be wasted, like Bob's natural charisma. I feel like Bob would be a funnier Sybil. And like Ginger Minge as Fanny is what immediately jumps to me, because the age thing and like kind of old drag meets the future.
And they both have pubic themed drag names.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be my pick for Fanny, would be Ginger Minge.
I can't speak for any of these. I'm not really into reality TV, but you're getting me interested.
Honestly, I'm with you, Rob. Like, I don't watch reality TV. As a younger person, I did watch The Bachelor and all that kind of stuff, but I just couldn't deal with it felt a lot of the times like the producers were the ones creating drama, and we just were watching people react to it, or they were starting stuff to get more attention on TV to become like a reality star. Whereas Drag Race, the last couple seasons have been a little bit more obvious, but season 6, 5, 8, 9, those were all really good seasons. I would highly recommend, because they do talk about, like I said, the history, and their own personal connections to their community facing hardships. Even in the most recent season, Valerie talked about there was an Atlanta shooting. I don't remember the specific details. I think it was at a Wendy's or something. And so it really touches on really relevant current struggles that queer people are facing, as well as the historic relevance. So I recommend it. I'm not a huge reality person, so I don't recommend very many reality shows because I don't watch that many. But honestly, I also, living in rural prairies, don't have much exposure or chance to go to live drag shows. Like, if Work the World ever came my way, I would be there. But unfortunately, I don't think they would have the ticket sales or the venues or what have you. But Bianca Del Rio's coming, so I'm getting ready.
Okay, now, I have a firm belief that every experience in life has a lesson, and as a species, as people, we can always evolve and do better and grow through these lessons. So I will ask, from this, what can we learn? Are there any lessons at all that we can take away from this story, this book, from these characters, anything?
Always save the dumpster baby.
I like it.
If you see something, do something.
That's it.
It's also a very British thing. I went to London, and on the tube, it had this ad playing throughout the different announcements. It was see something, say something, sorted.
Oh, sorted.
There you go. Sorted. Yeah. Yes.
So they have signs in, especially after 2001, there's been signs in New York public transit that say, see something, say something. Okay. But that's a report suspicious activity hotline, not encouraging people to intervene in situations.
Yeah. No, we've got that on city transit in this area as well. What popped up in the past couple of years, that idea. But when you started saying that is a very British thing, I thought you were going to say dumpster babies, and that you went to London and there was just every dumpster there was a baby in it. What?
Oh God, that's horrifying. I believe it would be a rubbish baby, but oh God, terrible joke. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, we love the puns.
No, that one and Mind the Gap. Those were the two on the tube that they kept playing over and over.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the thing I learned from this was, if you've been doing something for 25 years, get yourself a new wind machine. You deserve it, honey. Treat yourself.
Exactly. Doesn't matter how old it is.
No, on a serious note, I think the thing I've learned from just drag queens the most in general is don't be afraid to try, even if it's just going to be in your house on a Saturday night watching movies. If you want to do something weird to your hair, or try a new eyeshadow, or buy a wig. This year for Christmas, I put a wig from Amazon on my Christmas list just in case, because I dyed my hair blue at one point, but it was, one, super expensive to maintain, but two, it looked really good. Every person I showed the photo to, it doesn't matter age, gender, race, or creed, they're like, wow, that suits you. It looks, with my undertones and stuff, it just genuinely complimented my skin tone in a weird way. And so I can't afford to do it. So I was like, a wig. I can afford a wig. So yeah, I haven't worn it much, but it's like, oh, I found it. Okay, well, am I doing anything this week? No. Wore it to a friend's house one time, like, wore it around the house doing dishes. No. But just feel free to have fun with your own self-representation and how you feel most comfortable in your body, skin. Just have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that there was also sort of a lesson in here, to hold on to your friends, hold on to the people you care about, and remind them who they are and who you know them to be if they maybe start acting a little monstrous.
Ooh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's similar to the lesson I got from this, that I think Fanny just displayed throughout the entire story, is respect for your fellow person. Just no matter who they are, if you show the person respect, whether they be a monstrous version of a friend you knew 125 years prior or a baby left in a dumpster, treat them like a person. And one day they could have your back.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Person first.
Exactly.
Yes.
So before we close up, is there any last notes or topics that we want to bring up about the book or just in general?
I feel like we went on a lot of tangents throughout.
This was, I think, like, recommended to us or asked of us, so if you have more, by all means.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yes,
It was
definitely.
a very good read. I will definitely check out more. And I'll be following the writer and artist very closely. I think that this is a very fun read. And if there's more out there, other works you've got, we're definitely going to check it out. I know I will.
It looks like the creator of this character, of the Fanny character, you can find at It's Shay Dorothy across all social media platforms.
Okay, good. That's a good thing to have. So definitely take a look at that, see what they've got in their repertoire. As for Chris Fields?
Was Hey Dorothy Comics the publisher of this one?
Yes, looks like
Okay.
it.
It's
This was the
Dorothy.
publisher, that's right.
But still, I'm sure if they're willing to publish this, they would have other content that might be worth reviewing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Okay, and one last thing. Do we have a favorite moment or part in the book that we want to highlight? I know I've got one.
Yeah, I have one too, and it's sort of towards the end. So without too much context, Sybil announces in conversation that she's going to turn back time. But reading that panel, I immediately heard it. Like, she goes, I'm going to turn back time. I heard it in Cher. I felt the Cher in that moment, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that was everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done.
I think mine was the, like, again, kind of with science fiction and time travel, there's a little bit of grain of salt and some suspension of disbelief, and I really like the idea of drag queen DNA, and that maybe we all have a piece, maybe not 100% like some drag queens we know, but we all have a piece because we're all born naked and the rest is drag, of course. How much of your DNA is drag queen DNA?
Sounds like one of those quizzes you would take on.
What percent drag
Yes.
queen?
Yes.
That's true.
I had two that stood out for me, and both were a little comedic at times, and they brought somebody from the future in the future, and this man dressed like a weird-ass Robin Hood. It's like, greetings, I bring news from the future, and he instantly gets shot and killed.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then during the, I guess the drag queen uprising, the Queen of England, I think it was Queen Elizabeth, just running or riding a horse through the streets of London away from these drag queens on motorcycles, and it's just so surreal.
That's an awesome page. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if she had a purse or not.
I think she did.
Surely she must have.
must
Right? That's all I ask.
I'm going to double check that right now.
Oh, it's page 23. She does not appear to be holding a purse. She's holding the reins of the horse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it is.
It is like a common joke. She's wearing her rubber boots, though. That when the queen goes to any appearance, she always has like this little handbag. Like it has a handle long enough to fit around her wrist, but the handbag is big enough to fit like a full book. Because she doesn't wear clutches. No clutches for the queen. But honestly, she's never seen opening it. She's never... like, I don't think she actually keeps anything in it ever, but if it's like a tea party, yes, it has to be. Or her day planner or her little black book or something. That, like, we never ever see her at any kind of daytime event where she would have, like, a garden party or anything like that. She always has to have a purse with her because the average woman would. And especially, I think, in her generation specifically, she's tried very hard to try and become more personable with the general population. Not that it's successful all the time, but so it's always just so funny to me that it's like, but does she have a handbag? Because honestly, if it really doesn't have anything in it and your palace is being stormed by a bunch of drag queens who have gone insane or drag bots, I don't think you'd be concerned about your non-purse.
I'm going to spend the rest of the day speculating on what's in there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I really liked the sketchbook in the back of the book and the page that was mentioned. You'll find on page 70 there were two versions of it. That was pretty cool. Looks like the page changed to include the armed motorcycle riding drag queens chasing the queen.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty cool.
And that was cool too. I'm one of those people who loves to see like works in progress or behind the scenes stuff. So having kind of the sketchbook at the back, that was really nice.
Definitely.
Nice touch.
That was good to see.
This was a really fun book. Y'all should pick it up. People
Definitely.
listening. Other folks on the podcast, we've already read it, so we're good. But you should get your own copy, listener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll say keep a lookout on Twitter. We will get a link up there to the book where you could purchase it and take a look, and a link to Chris Field's Twitter account, and we'll get that going. It's a fun read, very much needed, and yet, like Caitlin said, just go pick it up. It's well worth it. And that's our show. Remember, you can help support the show by signing up for our Patreon, www.patreon.com/notarobotpodcasts for just $1 a month, and get your name shouted out on the podcast of your choice, access to all of our material, and more. And I just want to thank you all again for giving us more love and more opportunities to bring you content that we love to talk about, all being LGBTQ+. And just keep a lookout for more. It's going to be a fun ride. I can't wait. And as always, there's only one way we say goodbye around here.
Be good to each other.
Love yourself.
And don't be a robot.
Just